Mr. Moderator, distinguished fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking forward to a profound scholarly address, I must say right off that you will be disappointed. Since I became Governor General, I have lost almost all contact with academia. What I promise to attempt is to place our Caribbean creoles in historical and philosophical context, relating the stubborn negative attitudes to them, which is unfortunately still quite widespread, to the cradle from which they and their speakers emerged. Two of the earliest and most important crops introduced to the Caribbean by its European settlers were sugar and tobacco. They provide, I am told, interesting contrasts. In the case of sugar, we throw away the leaves and use the stalk. In the case of tobacco, we throw away the stalk and use the leaves. Again, sugar, a carbohydrate of worldwide importance, is used within reason, a food that makes life sweeter. Tobacco introduces into the body of its users nicotine, a deadly poison. But the difference I wish to focus on today is that tobacco remains an honest brown all its life, whereas sugar begins as an almost black molasses. Then by a process called refinement, it whitens itself as it moves up the social scale. That is a fair analogy of the society we have inherited from our colonial past. Skin color has puzzled and intrigued humanity from earliest times, and there have been strange attempts to explain it. In some Pacific islands, a myth tells us that God created mankind by kneading dough in the form of men and women and put them in an oven to bake. But he carelessly forgot to take them out at the proper time, so they were burnt. That is why the myth says Africans are black. So God tried again, but this time he was so eager to avoid his first mistake that he took them out when they were only half-baked, which is why Europeans are light-skinned. The third time, God was careful to take out the loaves just at the perfect time, creating the beautiful brown people of the Pacific Islands. You will notice that the myth works in favor of its creators. Another myth associated with the Semitic peoples tells us that when Noah and his family and all living creatures were saved from the universal flood, God commanded that there should be no sex in the ark. The dog disobeyed and was punished by having problems of disengagement whenever his descendants had sex. One of Noah's sons, Ham, disobeyed and became black as a result. Also, the myth goes on, his dark-skinned descendants were condemned to perpetual servitude and slavery. Of course, we now know about melanin, the chemical responsible for differences in the color of hair, eyes, skin, and also the more melanin, the darker the skin. And the scientists also add melanin helps to protect its possessors against skin cancer. So the truth is the opposite of the myths. Blackness is a blessing rather than a curse. The West Indian planters and the slave lobby did their best to perpetuate the notion of African and black inferiority as a way of justifying the unchristian institution of slavery. In his History of Jamaica, Edward Long, a planter and slaveholder, points out that Negroes, as he called Africans, did not have human hair, but instead, and I quote him, a covering of wool like the bestial fleece. Note his choice of the adjective bestial to link the slave with beasts, with animals. He goes on to describe, and I quote again, the roundness of their eyes, the tumid nostrils, the flat noses, the invariable thick lips, and the general large size of the female nipples, as if adapted by nature to the peculiar conformation of their children's mouths. He also refers, and I quote again, to the black color of the lice which infest their bodies. This peculiar circumstance I do not remember to have seen noticed by any naturalist. They resemble the white lice in shape, but are generally of larger size. Finally, he ends his description of Negroes. There is their bestial or fetid smell, which they all have to a greater or lesser degree. This scent is in some of them so excessively strong that it continues in places where they have been for up to a quarter of an hour. Plantalong and many other propagandists like him left a heritage of contempt and strong disparagement for everything black and African in our region. Even eating did not escape the ferocity of his pen. He writes, and I quote again, "At their meals they tear the meat with their talons and chuck it by handfuls down their throats with all the voracity of wild beasts. At their politest entertainments, they thrust their hands all together into the dish, sometimes returning into it what they have been chewing."